Our guest today is David Rynick, a Zen teacher, author, life coach, and grandfather who writes about the sweet joys and challenges of everyday life. He's a founding teacher of the Boundless Way Zen Temple, and since 2003, Rynick has worked as a life and leadership coach. He has also been a professional potter and improvisational dancer and holds a black belt in judo, and has taught dance, aikido, and qigong, as well as organizational leadership, systems thinking, pottery, and creative process. David, you coming from a Christian background as the son of a Presbyterian minister, can you define for us the differences between religious belief and Zen?
Wow, start off right at the heart of it here. Um, I think I blame my father for my involvement in Zen, because he was someone who believed that we could discover God in our everyday lives. He was very much an experiential person rather than a doctrinal person. And when I encountered Zen in my mid-20s, Zen was just very clear that we can hold many beliefs, but that life happens in this moment. And that if we want to be close to this moment, in some ways we have to give up our opinion of how it is or how it should be. So Zen really stresses the importance of our own individual experience.
Yeah, wonderful. The age we live in seems to be drowning in information and external distraction while starving in wisdom. How can we create more awareness through Zen for the everyday person?
Um, I don't want to convert anyone to Zen. It's a wonderful path, and I've given my life to it in some way. But Zen, like any other thing we think of, has its own traps. And you can become a person of Zen. And then if someone insults Zen, then you have to defend it and take an opinion. But I think the wisdom of Zen is available to everyone and is present in so many different traditions. But this wisdom, one of the gifts of Zen actually is the encouragement to practice. You know, people who are new come into our community and say, well, what books should I read? And I said, well, you don't actually have to read any books. You know, just come and listen to some talks and sit and be quiet. And then in this slowing down and in this intentional slowing down, I think we all know that life has such a fierce momentum to it. And it just, you do one thing and then you need to do another and another and another. And without some intention to choose something else, we're just swept away by those energies.
Yeah, so it's also a lot about setting boundaries and finding that inner space, that quiet space for awareness. I tried Zen myself, and I must admit, I I had quite a problem sitting for such a long period of time. I had real
Ah,
back pain.
me too. Me too. When I started Zen, I heard a Zen teacher and I was very excited because I thought, well, here's somebody who has a lot of wisdom. And then I tried to sit still and I decided that I wanted to do this. And I'm an enthusiastic guy. So when I take something up, I want to go whole hog. But I knew if I tried to sit for half an hour a day, that would only last for a few days. So I started with 2 minutes a day. I would set my timer, and at the end of a minute and a half, I'm crawling out of my skin. But I kept doing it, 2 minutes, and then I got up to 3 minutes. So it really is not what we're used to.
That's a great method to uh, for people who want to try out meditation, to start with small sequences. That's really a great idea.
Yeah. And people are surprised at how hard it is. You know, everybody, well, I think so many people say, yeah, I'd really like to meditate, and so I'm going to do it, but it's really hard to be with ourselves. Our minds are on such a continuous loop, and we're just so unused to slowing down. So small chunks, and then to do it in community. One of the
Yeah.
other wisdoms of Zen is that we can't do this by ourselves. And so my wife and I started our first Zen group in 1991. We'd moved to Worcester, Massachusetts, a new city, and there was nobody to meditate with. We'd belonged to a group in Connecticut. And so we got together with two friends. And so the four of us would get together and we made a date. And at 8:20 on Sunday evenings, we would sit together. And we had a 5-year-old daughter. So we put her to bed at 8 o'clock and figured by 8:20, she would be quiet. But to have those other people and to make that commitment allowed us to keep doing it.
Yeah, that's really wonderful to practice this in community, because I did my 1 week Zen session with about 15 other people.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
there was one person in the group who had great difficulty. He got really aggressive when we were doing gardening outside.
Oh, no.
Uh,
An aggressive gardener. You got to watch out for them.
I still remember how he threw this shovel onto the ground, and I mean, obviously something came up. And I personally, I was in the monkey mind completely. I would sort of be quiet and then experience this moment of stillness, and then suddenly there would be thousands of thoughts in my
Yeah,
head.
yeah. Well, and this is what practice is about. Usually there are 1,000 thoughts in our head, but we're not even aware of them. So some people, when they start meditation, say, it's worse than it was before. And I say, no, it's not worse. It's just you're noticing. And until we notice the activity of the mind, it just carries us along. So you were doing wonderful, Zen, uh, suffering with your 1,000 thoughts.
Well, I still do. I read some study that we have about 70 to 80,000 thoughts a day, and a lot of these thoughts are negative self-talk. I'm not good enough. I'm not strong enough. Not healthy enough. Not beautiful enough. Not rich enough. Whatever.
Yeah, and as I said, until we get some awareness of those thoughts kind of, we just think it's true, and it's the world we live in. And the challenge of any kind of discipline of slowing down is that we encounter what we've put in the closet way in the back, and we don't really want to see that. We don't want to feel that, thank you very much. So to one, I would never recommend someone going on a Zen retreat unless you have some kind of regular practice and you know the teacher. So we have lots of practices on Zoom every day, and we encourage people, if you want to sign up for a retreat, try it for an hour first, and then be in relationship with a teacher. But to be free is a dangerous thing.
Indeed.
Right? And there are all these different energies within us. And I think to truly wake up means waking up not just to the sweetness and the clarity, but waking up to the confusion and the difficulty and the pain that is part of life.
Exactly. I mean, we have this indoctrination from especially social media, where we have all these postings of beautiful people, uh, and you never see any postings of people going through struggles in life.
Right, right. Well, and one of the things in this new book that's coming out, Wandering Close to Home, uh, is that I have these short passages, and a number of them are about my own struggles as I try to be honest. You know, as a teacher, it's kind of nice because people look at me and say, well, he's got that nice haircut. He has this calm manner. His life must be, wonderful. Well, it is wonderful, but it's not easy. And some mornings I wake up and I have trouble getting out of bed. The negative thoughts are going. So in my writing and in when I teach, I try to acknowledge that those are a part of life. That's not a mistake, and you're not going to get rid of that.
Yeah, there's a lot of this self-blame that we're supposed to be like this or that.
Yeah.
I went through my own struggles, and I started walking the pilgrimage routes in Spain, the Camino, done more
Yeah.
than a dozen walks now. And I started my first walk when I was in a really bad phase in my life, going through a divorce and having to change jobs and going through a whole transformation on many levels. And I think also having spoken to many people on the Camino, going through similar life
Yeah.
situations, having lost a loved one, have going through a health crisis, that this more or less forces us into introspection, into self-reflection, into finding our spiritual roots.
Well, and so the Buddha's first noble truth is that suffering is unavoidable. And he didn't call this the first problem with life or the first downer, but this noble truth that through the losses, through the difficulty, there is, and maybe only through this, there is some possibility of dying to who we thought we were, and we will all die soon enough. But through events like you're talking, when your life falls apart, it seems like the worst thing in the world, and it is, but yet through that you found something of incomparable value, didn't you?
Absolutely. I take the analogy from Christianity. You have to go through a kind of crucifixion. And then after experiencing this crucifixion, you have the resurrection. You have an elevation of consciousness.
Right. Well, and William James, the great American psychologist, early 20th century, sometimes thought of as the founder of psychology, he wrote a book called The Varieties of Religious Experience. And he talks about once born religion and twice born religions. And once born is kind of a positivism, where just think the right thoughts. If you're not feeling good, it's your problem because you're not thinking right, don't believe the right things. But twice born, and he includes Christianity and Buddhism in this, say that you have to die. Some parts of you have to die. There's no way around it. You can't go over it. You can't avoid it. And that is this image of the crucifixion and the dark night of the soul. So many people have talked about it. And the problem is when those things start to happen, we think it's wrong.
Hmm.
Well, I shouldn't be here. Let me fix this. Let me back
Yeah.
away. And in Zen practice, we encourage people to stay. People will come to me during retreats. You can meet with the teacher. And so people will come and say, oh, I'm just suffering so much. I'm really in pain. And I say, well, this is good. And they say, what do you mean this is good? I want something else. No, this is your life. And if you can stay with it, you will find it is not what you think it is, this
Hmm.
doubt.
Of course, in Buddhism, you speak of transmuting the ego, uh, the concept of ego. And I think that is a very difficult thing to do, being ego-less.
Well, and I want to say it's impossible. When I was starting to teach in a bigger way, and my wife and I were traveling and doing workshops, I talked to my Zen teacher and I said, I'm a little concerned that this is about my ego, wanting to be a, big famous person. And he laughed and he said, of course it's about your ego. He said, if you didn't do this, it would be about your ego. So this idea that somehow we can do some kind of work and get rid of our ego, there's one way to get rid of your ego for good, but it's underground 6 feet. So how do we work with our ego? A wonderful thing to have an ego. If you don't have an ego, you've got a big problem, right? Because you aren't going to be able to, fix lunch today or, do what you need to do. So how to use this and be aware of it rather than think somehow it's the problem we have to get rid of.
Mm, mm. Let's get to the current situation we're in globally,
Yeah.
where there is a lot of division and the voices of hate seem to become very definitive. Not only in America, but if I look at the recent European elections, the amount of hate and xenophobia going around, it's just very concerning.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, it is, and we have such quick access to it through, through all kinds of media, and it's kind of bombarding us. And it does seem like the internet has allowed a further separation. It does not seem like this has allowed us to actually be with people who hold different beliefs, but it seems to amplify and people then spend time in their tribe and get more and more upset with the other tribes. Um, and I guess from the Buddhist perspective, the Zen perspective, we talk about the Bodhisattva of compassion, Kanzeon, and she is the embodiment of the part of us that hears the cries of the world. So one, as you were saying before, boundaries are so important. So to live a healthy life in this world, if you're watching the internet or watching TV or the news very much at all, it's very easy just to get caught up, and then you become a crusader who then wants to defeat the other side. So how to have boundaries about how much information you take and how you take it in. Um, but then to let your heart break.
Mm.
I think that it is a heartbreaking world, and it seems to be getting worse in spite of, good intentioned people, you and me and other people. Uh, but how do we meet this impossible situation?
There seems to be something happening on the collective consciousness globally, where I'm kind of wondering whether we're not regressing into a phase before making a step forward. It happens a lot. It happened a lot in history because if we look at the Renaissance, that was an era of enlightenment where humanity moved forward, and then we had another dark period. So I'm kind of wondering where we are at the moment.
Yeah. Well, one of the teachings I know about systems is that a system is only able to fundamentally change when it is far from equilibrium. When things are fairly steady and smooth, there's so much inertia holding us as we are. So certainly we are in a time of disequilibrium. Uh, and, and of course, we all know this on a personal level, and even throughout the day, we may have times you feel, okay, yeah, I'm doing pretty well. And then the thoughts come, or then something happens, and then we're in disequilibrium. And then we're fighting against ourselves, or then we're aligned with ourselves. So part of the work for me is to be present where we are. So the goal of meditation is not to be calm. Calmness is a byproduct that sometimes happens, and it's quite lovely. I like it myself. But life is this S curve, right? And it only flattens out at the end.
Wow.
So how do we learn to appreciate light and day, breathe in and breathe out, calm and clear, discouraged and anxious? All of this is our birthright.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was the mysticist Meister Eckhart, the 13th century mystic Meister Eckhart, who said something similar or wrote something similar in one of his sermons, where it more or less went along the lines of, you cannot experience the beauty of life unless you have gone through this night of the soul moment and seen the darkness, gone through the darkness.
Yeah. And he might have added that it doesn't end, that so there are experiences people ask about Zen enlightenment and awakening. And there certainly are moments of human consciousness that are clear and beautiful. And I maintain that we all have them. This is not some special thing that you have to be a Zen monk or go to the Tibetan mountains, but these little moments, and sometimes it's just the tip of the tongue taste. You go out in the morning and the sun is bright and the air is cool and you have a breath. That's awakening,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
And it is not a fixed thing.
yeah.
It will disappear. I guarantee it. Whatever wonderful transcendent experience you have is just a wonderful transcendent experience. And I believe and I've seen that we're changed by that, but we are still human. We are still on this roller coaster.
Yeah, I like that concept. We're still human, and
You
and
know,
we
and
go through struggles.
we do, and uh, it continues and it's not a problem. And one of the things in the Zen tradition, one of the wonderful things is that there's lots of experience about awakening. How do we live? How do we behave? I had a very powerful experience in college and university of awakening to the oneness of the world, that love is around, we lack nothing. But then it was so painful when that went away. And I think many people have had these mountaintop experiences. You're walking the Camino and you think, all right, now I get it. Oh, I didn't get it before, but now I've got it. And then you hold on to it. I'm going to put it in my pocket up here, and then whenever I need it. And of course, it's not a thing like that, is it?
Yeah, it's really, I mean, because when you reach your destination in Santiago de Compostela and see this beautiful cathedral, end of your journey, a lot of pilgrims have this Camino blues, and I have had that too. You want to relive that moment, and for weeks after that, you still you still want to keep walking. You still want to relive that moment.
Well, and when people come on retreats with us, we often say at the end of the retreat, don't worry about holding on to anything that you think you learned here. Because if you try to hold on to your experience, it will be painful.
Yeah, yeah. So this lesson of letting go of attachment applies to everything. It forces us back into being present, as you just said earlier, being aware of that precious moment when you may be out walking and seeing the sun and hearing the birds sing and uh, um, just being grateful for being alive.
Yeah. And like the ego, the great thing about attachment is you don't have to worry about getting rid of it because you never will.
Yeah.
Uh, but again, we can become aware of it. And when we become aware of something, it transforms. Not that I transform it or you can, but so when we're aware of attachment, we can then try to get rid of it. Okay, I'm going to get rid of my attachment but that doesn't work so well. But just being with the attachment, there is some light of awareness. One teacher said it's the universal solvent, right? So in these states of clinging and attachment and fear, whatever it is, the instruction in Zen is not to get over it, but to get into it.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Because
like
it
that.
is
I
not
like
what
that.
you think it
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes more sense. It's,
Yeah. And
yeah.
my teacher used to say, our miserable karma becomes our wonderful dharma. Our
Yeah.
miserable karma becomes our wonderful dharma, right? And then the things about myself that I'm really not very happy about are the entryway into something beyond that.
Mm, mm,
Yeah.
yeah. David, you are such a versatile person. You
Yeah.
do Aikido, you do dancing, you do judo. Let's talk about your passion in gardening. How does that connect with Zen?
Um, well, of course, ancient tradition in Zen of Zen gardens and the lovely Japanese, stone gardens and paying attention in that way. But um, for me, my love of gardening comes from my mom, who used to love to be out in the world in that way. And I find that gardening is just something that delights my soul, to be alive in the garden. And I have a new definition of gardening because when in about 15 years ago, my wife and I moved into a large building that was the Zen temple, became the Zen temple. And it was on an acre of land, which is quite a bit of land, and trees and some hills and things. And it gardening can be overwhelming. There's so much to do. But my definition of gardening is spending time in the garden. So walking in the garden is gardening. And I find that, I guess I'm an enthusiastic person. I don't consider myself an expert gardener, but I love to see things grow. And I've taken every spring to starting seeds, starting plants from seeds and just seeing them grow. Life is so miraculous. People say, where's the miracle? Well, it's all around the leaves on the tree, the dandelion in the sidewalk. All of this is amazing, but we need to slow down
Hmm.
enough to see it. And gardening is a way of slowing down for me and joining with these green things. I don't know how to grow anything. I don't know how a seed goes from a seed to a sprout to a big plant, but I know that if I put the seed in a little bit of dirt and keep it moist, that it will know what to do. And
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
delights me to no end.
Yeah, a plant is such an analogy of life because you actually see it grow and then it blooms and it dies and new seeds are thrown out into the soil and then something new grows.
Yeah. And it's a wild trip, this growing and dying and seeds being thrown out. And as you were saying before, the pictures on Facebook don't show the wholeness of that and don't value the wholeness of dying and failing and things breaking apart. But of course, in the plant world, all the time, it's just normal.
Yeah, yeah, and our culture so banishes the process of death from life.
Yeah.
Uh, Old persons are moved to an old age home. Uh, I still remember when I was present at the age of about 3, I think it was, when my great grandmother died. I was present, and I can still vividly call back that experience. I was
Good
present
bless.
when my mother died. I was present when my mother-in-law died. So death for me is a transition. I sort of instinctively realized that as a small child.
What a blessing. And as you say, we're so insulated from it as if it's some kind of bad thing. One of the things I like to say is that death is highly underrated. And that I think we should die as often as we can. Uh, and in fact, we have to die to each moment to enter the next one.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's easy. Sometimes yeah, I'm all in. And sometimes we go kicking and screaming. But it is a miracle, this appearing and disappearing of life. Where did your grandmother go to? And I remember when our daughter was born, we came home from the hospital with my wife, and we just put her in the middle of the living room floor and stared at her and like, where did you come from? This being. And I was present at my father's death and my grandmother's, and where did you go to?
Yeah, yeah. I thought there was this moment where you it didn't last very long, where you had this feeling that the person's soul was still in the room after the last exhaling breath.
Uh,
And then this realization, well, she is now somewhere else.
yeah, it's such a mystery, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
and going back to your first question about belief, there's a wonderful story about a student who asked a famous Zen master, "What happens to us when we die?" And the Zen master said, "I don't know." And the student said, "Well, aren't you a great Zen master?" And he said, "Yes, but I'm not a dead Zen master."
I like that one. That's good.
Is that nice? There, there is
I
this.
just love these Zen stories. They are just so precious.
Yeah, they really are. They're, designed to kind of disrupt and to create those moments of disequilibrium, right? So this getting lost, getting stuck, not a problem. But again, circling back to this book that's coming out, Wandering Close to Home in September, um, being in those places of being stuck or being lost or unbalanced is quite a challenge, right? Because the opinion is so strong. This is bad. I should not be feeling tired, right? Or I should not be thinking this or that. But I do believe that with practice, we can get better at being present.
Yeah, yeah. That is such good advice for people who are going through daily struggles, going from paycheck to paycheck, having these thoughts, how am I going to feed my family? How am I going to pay my monthly rent? A lot of people are in that situation.
Ah. Well, and the daily struggles of each one of us. So
Mhm.
there you are in Mallorca. The sun is always out. The weather is wonderful. But of course, you go through your struggles. Some days, I'm sure, feeling clear and proud and, able to give your wisdom. And then other days, like, what am I doing? Right?
Very
Who am I?
much so. Very much so.
Hmm.
David, it was wonderful talking to you. What message do you have for our audience, and where can people connect with you?
Yeah. Uh, the message is that what you are looking for is already here. what you are, might say, what you are longing for is already here. And you don't have to believe that, but you might consider for a day, what if it's true? How would you go through your day looking around? What if, right? And that is one way of kind of opening to appreciate your
Yeah,
life.
that's a wonderful message. And your book, you said, is coming out in September.
Yeah, the book is Wandering Close to Home, a year of Zen reflections, consolations, and reveries. And it's so much along the line of this conversation we've been having. It's really a delight to move into it this way. So September 1st, it'll be available on Amazon and other online and retail stores. And to be in touch with me, the Boundless Way .org, boundlesswayzen.org. You can get in our website, and we have daily Zoom sittings and have people from all over the world joining us. So a chance to be in community, to hear some talks from teachers, and also to meet with teachers individually. So
Wonderful.
yeah, and the other place, davidrynick.com on my
Okay.
website, some links to the book
Yeah.
and things.
We'll post those in the show notes below so that people don't have to remember. And
Good.
it was
Yeah,
such a lovely conversation with you, David. Thank you so much.
yeah, thank you. I appreciate your what you're doing in the world, this having these conversations, offering this support. So thank you for your purpose and mission here. So, all right, take care.